The house, Oak Haven, does not wake up on its own. It requires a series of small, rhythmic sacrifices. At 5:30 in the morning, the floorboards are cold enough to ache against the soles of my feet, and the air smells of old cedar and the faint, lingering scent of last night's roasted chicken. I move through the hallways like a ghost that hasn't realized it's dead yet. I pull the heavy velvet curtains, I unlock the back door to let the damp morning air circulate, and I begin the coffee. The machine groans, a tired, mechanical sound that mirrors the stiffness in my lower back. I am 68 years old, and for 20 of those years, I have lived in this house as both its heartbeat and its furniture. My son, Julian, lives in the West Wing with his wife, Claire, and their 2 children. They call it the addition, a modern glass and steel graft onto the side of this Victorian skeleton. Julian says he kept me here so I wouldn't be lonely after my husband, Arthur, passed. He says it was an act of grace to let me stay in the family estate. But grace, I've found, often looks a lot like unpaid labor when viewed from the kitchen sink. By 7 o'clock, the silence is punctured by the sharp heels of my daughter-in-law. Claire enters the kitchen without looking at me. She is looking at her phone, her thumb flicking rapidly across the screen. "Mom, did the dry cleaner drop off Julian's navy suit?" she asks. She doesn't wait for a verbal answer. She heads straight for the coffee pot I just filled. "It's in the mudroom, Claire. I pressed the shirt again. The cleaner had missed a crease in the collar," I say. My voice is thin, a used-up thing. "Great. Also, Leo has soccer today. He needs his orange jersey. I couldn't find it in his drawer this morning." "It was at the bottom of the hamper. I washed it last night. It's folding on the dryer," I reply. She pours her coffee, takes a sip, and frowns. "Is this the decaf? I told Julian we're trying to cut back on his caffeine." "It's the blend he asked for yesterday," I say quietly. She sighs, a soft, performative sound of exasperation, and walks out. She hasn't looked me in the eye once. To Claire, I am an automated system. I am the reason the fridge is full, the reason the lint is gone from the dryer, and the reason the house doesn't smell like the decay of a century-old building. I am the biological equivalent of a smart home app. Julian follows 10 minutes later. He is 42, successful in private equity, and carries the air of a man who is constantly being interrupted by the world's incompetence. He kisses my cheek, but his eyes are already on the television mounted above the stove, checking the morning markets. "Morning, Mom. Is there any of that sourdough left? The stuff you get from the bakery in town?" "I didn't make it to the bakery yesterday, Julian. The alternator in my car is acting up again. I mentioned it on Tuesday." Julian doesn't look away from the screen. Right. Just take Claire's SUV when she's at the club later. I'll have someone look at yours next week. Or maybe we just trade it in. It's an eyesore in the driveway, honestly." He says it casually, as if my only means of independence, a 10-year-old sedan that Arthur bought me, is merely an aesthetic blemish on his property. "I'd prefer to just have it fixed," I say. "We'll see. Can you scramble some eggs? High protein. I have a long board meeting." I turn to the stove. I crack the eggs. The shells are brittle. I think about how much of my life has been spent standing at this exact tile, watching butter melt in a pan. I have cooked 10,000 eggs in this kitchen. I have scrubbed the grout with a toothbrush. I have polished the silver that we only use when Julian wants to impress a client. As I plate his food, Julian finally looks at me. Not at my face, but at my hands. "You're shaking a bit, Mom," he says, his tone shifting to that patronizing, concerned register he uses when he wants to remind me of my fragility. "Maybe you should sit down. You don't have to do all this, you know. We've told you we can hire a housekeeper." It is a lie we both participate in. If they hired a housekeeper, they would have to pay them. They would have to provide benefits. They would have to treat them with the professional distance required by law. By keeping me, they get a chef, a laundress, a nanny, and a property manager for the price of a bedroom I already owned before they moved in. I'm fine, I say. It's just the cold. Well, keep an eye on it. We need you at 100% for the weekend. Claire's parents are coming up and she wants to do that big garden brunch. You know how her mother is about the hydrangeas. I'll make sure they're watered, I say. He finishes his eggs in 4 minutes, drops the plate in the sink, 6 inches from the dishwasher, and heads for the door. Oh, and Mom, he calls out from the hallway. The tax assessor is coming by today to look at the estate's footprint. Just let him in and show him the basement. I'm thinking of putting a wine cellar where your old sewing room is. We don't really use that space, right? He doesn't wait for the answer. The heavy front door thuds shut, vibrating through the bones of the house. I stand alone in the kitchen. The sewing room was where I made Julian's first baby blankets. It is the only room in the house that still smells like my life before it was consumed by theirs. I look down at the sink. Julian's plate sits there, a yellow smear of yolk drying under the fluorescent light. I don't wash it. For the first time in 20 years, I simply leave it there. I walk to the hallway closet and reach for the high shelf behind the extra linens. I pull out a small leather-bound folder. Inside is the deed to Oak Haven. Julian assumes the house passed to him when Arthur died. He assumes that because he pays the property taxes and the electric bill, he is the master of this domain. He has forgotten, or perhaps he never cared to check, the specifics of his father's will, or the fact that I never signed the transfer papers he tucked into a pile of standard paperwork 5 years ago. The tax assessor isn't coming today because Julian called him. He's coming because I did. I hear the mail slot clink. A single envelope falls onto the rug. I pick it up. It's a brochure for a high-end assisted living community in the city. The kind with a library, a garden I don't have to weed, and doors that lock from the inside. I tuck the brochure into my apron pocket and go back to the kitchen. I look at the dirty plate. I look at the clock. I have 3 days until the garden brunch. 3 days to remain the silent, shaking old woman they think they know. The look on his face won't be about the money. It will be about the realization that the servant has decided to quit, and she's taking the house with her. The tax assessor, a man named Mr. Henderson, arrives at precisely 11 o'clock. He is not a tax assessor, of course. He is a senior partner at a boutique real estate firm specializing in historic estates. I invited him under the guise of Julian's request so as not to arouse suspicion if Claire happened to be home. He stands in the foyer, his eyes tracing the intricate dental molding and the original stained glass above the oak door. He carries a leather briefcase and a sense of quiet reverence that my son hasn't shown this house in 2 decades. "It's impeccable, Mrs. Sterling," Henderson whispers, as if he's in a cathedral. Most people would have replaced these floors with something easier to maintain, or painted the mahogany white. "My husband loved the grain of the wood," I say, my voice steady. "I've waxed it by hand every 6 months since 1984. It shows. The market for untouched Victorians is, well, it's aggressive, especially in this much acreage." We walk through the parlor. I show him the pocket doors that still slide without a sound, a testament to the hours I spent graphite lubricating the tracks while Julian was at soccer practice years ago. I show him the sunroom, where the leaded glass captures the light in honey-colored pools. I feel a strange, cold thrill. For the first time in years, I am being seen as a steward, a person of agency, rather than a background character in someone else's success story. To Henderson, I am the owner of a multi-million-dollar asset. To Julian, I am the woman who forgot to buy the organic almond milk. The psychological shift is dizzying. "I'll need to see the basement and the attic," Henderson says, "to verify the structural integrity of the foundations." As we descend the stairs to the basement, we pass the sewing room. The door is ajar. Julian has already been in there. A measuring tape lies discarded on my cutting table, and several of my vintage patterns have been pushed to the floor to make room for a stack of wine rack catalogs. I pause at the door. I see my old Singer sewing machine, the one Arthur bought me with his first real bonus. It's covered in a fine layer of dust I haven't had time to clean because I was too busy polishing Julian's silver. "Is something wrong?" Henderson asks. "No," I say, stepping over a discarded catalog featuring temperature-controlled cellars. "Just a bit of clutter to clear out." We finish the tour just as the school bus brakes squeal at the end of the long driveway. Henderson shakes my hand on the porch. "I'll have the preliminary valuation to you by Friday, Mrs. Sterling. It's a remarkable property. You've kept its soul intact." He leaves just as my grandson Leo trudges up the steps. He is 10, and already he has mastered his father's walk, a heavy, entitled stride that expects the world to move out of his way. He drops his mud-caked backpack on the pristine foyer floor I spent 2 hours mopping this morning. "Grandma, I'm hungry. Is there any pizza left?" he asks, not looking up. "No, Leo. I can make you a sandwich, or there's fruit." "Sandwich," he grunts, heading for the den. "But no crusts. And use the good ham, not the stuff in the plastic tub." He doesn't say thank you. He doesn't ask how my day was. He doesn't even notice the stranger in the suit driving away. I am simply the provider of the good ham. I go to the kitchen. I make the sandwich. I trim the crusts with surgical precision. My hands aren't shaking now. They are very, very still. At 4 o'clock, Maya, my 14-year-old granddaughter, slams the front door. She represents a different kind of neglect, the kind that is loud and performative. She storms into the kitchen, her face a mask of teenage tragedy. "Gran, where is my black skirt, the one with the pleats?" "It's in the laundry, Maya. I haven't gotten to the delicates yet." "I need it tonight! We're going to the mall. You said you'd have it done by Wednesday." "I said I would try, Maya. I had to take your father's suits to the cleaner and prep the guest rooms for your other grandparents." Maya groans, a sound of pure, unadulterated victimhood. "You're always so slow lately. Mom says it's because you're getting scattered. Maybe you should write things down." She turns on her heel and vanishes upstairs. Scattered. I lean against the counter. I think about the word. To be scattered is to be broken into small pieces, spread thin across a wide area. It is an accurate description of what I have allowed them to do to me. I am a piece of myself in the laundry room, a piece in the kitchen, a piece in the garden, and a piece in the sewing room that is being measured for wine racks. I haven't been a whole person in a very long time. Dinner is a tense affair. Claire is back, nursing a glass of Chardonnay and complaining about her tennis partner's lack of focus. Julian is on his laptop at the head of the table, Arthur's table, occasionally barking a question about the tax assessor. "So, did the guy show up?" Julian asks, his mouth full of the pot roast I spent 4 hours braising. "He did," I say. "And? Did he look at the basement? Did you tell him about the wine cellar plans? It should add significant value to the appraisal." "He looked at everything, Julian. He was very thorough." "Good. I want to get the equity line of credit opened up by next month. Claire wants to redo the pool area, and I'm looking at a firm in the city that needs a capital injection." He says this so casually. The equity line of credit. He is planning to borrow against the marrow of this house to fund his investments and a swimming pool Claire will use twice a year. He is spending money that isn't his, on a property he doesn't own, while the woman who does own it sits across from him, serving him more carrots. "The house is worth a lot of money, isn't it, Julian?" I ask. My voice is conversational, light. He looks up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Of course it is. Why? You're not getting ideas about downsizing, are you? We've discussed this, Mom. You're staying here. It's the family legacy." "The legacy," I repeat. "Exactly. Besides," he adds, returning his gaze to his screen, "where would you go? You've lived here for 40 years. You wouldn't know how to function in a condo. You need us to take care of the heavy lifting." The heavy lifting. I look at the heavy porcelain platter I carried from the stove. I look at the heavy burden of their collective expectations. "I suppose you're right," I say quietly. "I wouldn't want to be a burden anywhere else." Claire reaches for the salt, her fingers brushing mine. She pulls back quickly, as if my skin were cold. "Oh, Mom, before I forget, the florist is dropping off the centerpieces for the brunch tomorrow morning. Make sure they put them in the pantry, not on the counter. The sun wilts the lilies." "I'll remember," I say. I wait until they are finished. I wait until the plates are stacked. I wait until the house settles into its evening hum of television and scrolling phones. I go to my bedroom, the small one on the first floor that used to be the library. I pull out my laptop, a device Julian bought me so I could look up recipes, and I log into my email. There is a message from the assisted living community. Unit 4B is available for a tour on Monday. It has a view of the park and a small studio space perfect for a sewing machine. I look at the photo of the room. It is small. It is white. It is empty. It looks like freedom. I hear a noise in the hallway. It's Julian, heading to the basement with a flashlight. I hear the door to my sewing room creak open. I hear him moving furniture, the heavy drag of my work table across the wood. He's already moving me out. He just doesn't know I've already left. I wake up before the sun again, but this morning the rhythm is off. I don't go straight to the kitchen. I go to the basement. The door to my sewing room, my sanctuary for 40 years, is wide open. The light is still humming, a cold, fluorescent buzz. Julian didn't just move the table, he cleared the shelves. My jars of vintage buttons, sorted by color and size, like a spectrum of lost memories, have been shoved into a cardboard box marked MISC. My dress form, the one I used to tailor Julian's first communion suit and Maya's flower girl dress, is tipped over in the corner like a fallen soldier. I stand in the center of the room, feeling the draft from the small, high window. This was the only place in Oakhaven where I didn't have to be a mother or a widow. Here, I was a creator. Now, the room smells of damp concrete and the metallic tang of Julian's measuring tape. I reach into the MISC box. My fingers find a small, wooden spool of silk thread, cerulean blue. I remember the dress I made with this. I wore it to a gala with Arthur when we were 40. He had leaned in close, his breath warm against my ear, and told me I was the most beautiful woman in the room. Julian's boots thud on the floorboards above my head. The house is waking up, and it is hungry. I leave the basement. I don't put the buttons back. I don't write the dress form. I simply close the door and lock it, pocketing the key. Julian will notice eventually, but for now, the silence is my only private property. "Mom, where's the steamer?" Claire calls out as I reach the top of the stairs. She is standing in the hallway, draped in a silk blouse that looks like it costs more than my car's repair bill. "In the laundry room closet, behind the winter coats," I say. "Can you get it? I'm running late for my hair appointment and I need this blouse ready for the brunch tomorrow. Oh, and did the florist call? I feel like I'm doing everything myself this year." I look at the blouse. It is delicate, expensive, and crumpled. "I'll see to it, Claire." "You're a lifesaver," she says, her eyes already back on her reflection in the hall mirror. She adjusts a diamond stud in her ear. "By the way, Julian said you were a little quiet at dinner last night. You're not getting a cold, are you? We really need you at the top of your game for my parents. My mother is still talking about that lemon tart you made last Easter." "I'm perfectly fine," I say. I take the blouse to the laundry room. As the steam rises, clouding the small window, I realize something. They don't want me to be healthy for my sake. They want me to be functional for theirs. I am an appliance that they are worried might be nearing its warranty expiration. The psychological weight of it is heavier than the house itself. Every thank you is a transaction. Every lifesaver is a reminder that without my labor, their polished suburban lives would descend into chaos within 48 hours. I spend the afternoon in Julian's SUV, running errands for the brunch. I buy the specific smoked salmon Claire likes, the heavy cream, the organic berries, and the imported champagne. I use the household credit card Julian gave me, the one he monitors on his phone. While I'm at the gourmet market, my phone pings. It's a text from my sister, Evelyn. She lives in a small cottage in Maine, and we haven't spoken in months. "Thinking of you, Martha. How is the big house treating you? Is Julian still playing King of the Hill?" I stare at the screen. Evelyn was the only one who told me not to let them move in. "They'll eat you alive, Martha," she had said over the funeral potatoes 5 years ago. "They'll turn you into a ghost in your own hallways." I don't reply. I can't. Not yet. If I acknowledge the truth to her, the cracks in my resolve might widen too quickly, and I need to stay whole for just a little longer. When I return, the house is a whirlwind. A catering company is dropping off extra chairs, and the florist has arrived with massive architectural arrangements of white lilies. The scent is overwhelming, sickly sweet, like a funeral parlor. Julian is in the foyer, arguing with a delivery man about the placement of a rental tent. He looks stressed, his tie loosened, his face flushed. When he sees me, he points to the bags in my hands. "Mom, finally. Take those to the kitchen. And the tax guy called, Henderson. He said he's sending over some preliminary documents via courier this afternoon. Make sure you sign for them and put them on my desk. Don't open them. It's just boring legal stuff for the equity line." My heart skips a beat. Don't open them. "Of course, Julian," I say, my voice a model of maternal obedience. I go to the kitchen and begin the grueling process of prepping the food. I peel 3 dozen potatoes. I zest lemons until my cuticles sting. I polish the silver spoons until I can see my own tired eyes in the bowls of the metal. Around 4 o'clock, the doorbell rings. It's the courier. He holds a thick, stiff envelope. "Signature required for Mrs. Martha Sterling," he says. I sign my name, the name that is still on the title of this land, and I take the envelope. I don't go to Julian's office. I go to my bedroom. I lock the door. Inside the envelope is not boring legal stuff. It is a full market analysis and a contract for representation from Henderson's firm. The estimated value of Oak Haven, with its prime acreage and pristine Victorian architecture, is nearly $4 million. There is also a note from Henderson. Mrs. Sterling, I've taken the liberty of drafting a notice of intent to vacate for your tenants as we discussed. It's a standard formality should you choose to proceed with a private sale. Given the current market, we could have this closed in 30 days. Tenants. Henderson sees my son and his family for what they legally are, occupants of my property. Julian sees me as a tenant in his life. The irony is a cold, sharp blade. Suddenly, there's a sharp knock on my bedroom door. "Mom, you in there?" Julian's voice is impatient. "The courier said he dropped off the Henderson papers. I need to get those signed and scanned before the bank closes." I look at the papers on my bed. I look at the door. My pulse is thundering in my ears, a sound like a drum in a deep well. "I'm just taking a nap, Julian," I say, my voice steady despite the roar in my head. "I've had a bit of a headache. I'll bring them to your office in an hour." A nap? Now? The caterers are asking about the oven temps, and Claire can't find the linen napkins. We don't really have time for a nap, Mom. He doesn't ask if I'm okay. He doesn't ask if I need an aspirin. He just reminds me that my time is not my own. 1 hour, Julian, I say, and I don't move from the bed. I hear him huff in the hallway, a sound of genuine disbelief that I would dare to be unavailable. He stomps away toward the kitchen, and I can hear him shouting for Claire. I look back at the contract. If I sign this, the house is gone. The wine cellar, the glass addition, the family legacy. It all evaporates. Julian will have to find a way to fund his investments without my walls. Claire will have to find a way to host her parents without my kitchen. I pick up a pen. My hand is perfectly still. I don't sign it. Not yet. I want to see them tomorrow. I want to see them at the brunch, surrounded by the lilies and the silver, blissfully unaware that the floor beneath their feet has already been sold. I put the papers back in the envelope and hide it under my mattress. As I walk out to the kitchen to tell the caterers about the oven, I pass the hall mirror. I look at the woman in the reflection. She looks small. She looks tired. But for the first time in 20 years, she looks like she's keeping a secret that could burn the whole house down. The morning of the garden brunch arrives with the kind of aggressive brightness that feels like an interrogation. By 6 a.m., I am already in the kitchen, my hands stained purple from macerating 4 quarts of organic blackberries. The house is vibrating with the hum of the industrial-strength floor polisher Julian hired to give the foyer a mirror finish for his in-laws. Claire's parents, Richard and Diane Whitney, are people who view the world through the lens of a balance sheet. They are old money, the kind that doesn't scream, but rather whispers in the rustle of high thread count linens and the silent glide of German-engineered car doors. They have never liked me. To them, I am the local girl Arthur married, a woman who worked in a library and still thinks a home is something you clean yourself. "Mom, are the mimosas ready for the arrivals?" Claire sweeps into the kitchen, her voice tight. She is wearing a cream-colored linen dress that cost more than my first 3 cars combined. She looks beautiful, sharp, and entirely disconnected from the labor required to maintain her lifestyle. "The champagne is chilling, Claire. I'll pour them as soon as the car pulls into the drive," I say. "And the quiche?" Diane is very particular about the crust. It can't be soggy. "I used the blind bake method I've used for 30 years, Claire. It won't be soggy." She doesn't thank me. She just sighs and checks her reflection in the stainless steel toaster. Julian is still looking for those tax papers, by the way. He's a bit annoyed you fell asleep before giving them to him. He says his banker is calling him on Monday morning. I have them in a safe place, I say, my back to her as I whisk the hollandaise. I didn't want them getting lost in the chaos of the catering. Whatever. Just give them to him after the brunch. He's already stressed enough about this investment. The Whitneys arrive at 11. From the kitchen window, I watch Julian and Claire greet them on the lawn. There are air kisses and hearty handshakes. Julian looks like the perfect scion of a successful dynasty, standing in front of the addition he built, which looks like a glass parasite attached to the side of my history. I am not invited to the greeting. I am the one who opens the door when they reach the porch. "Hello, Martha," Diane says, her smile not reaching her eyes. She hands me her wrap without looking at me, the way one might hand a coat to a rack. "Wonderful weather. I hope the garden isn't too humid. My hair, you know." "It's lovely out, Diane. Please, come through to the terrace," I say. The brunch is a master class in social exclusion. I move between the kitchen and the terrace, carrying trays of smoked salmon blinis and silver pots of coffee. I am a ghost in an apron. The conversation flows around me like water around a stone. They talk about the market, the yacht club, Maya's private school tuition, and Julian's vision for the estate. "It's really a project of love," Julian says, leaning back in his chair as I refill his coffee. "Updating a property like this while maintaining its soul, it's a full-time job. I've put a lot of capital into the infrastructure this year." Richard nods, puffing on a cigar. "Smart move, Julian. Real estate is the only thing they aren't making more of. And having your mother here to oversee the day-to-day, well, it's a convenient arrangement, isn't it?" "It works for everyone," Julian says, his voice casual. "She likes to stay busy, don't you, Mom?" I am standing right there, holding the heavy silver cream pitcher. Every eye at the table turns to me, but they aren't looking at me as a person. They are looking at me as a data point in Julian's successful life. "I like the house to be cared for," I say. My voice is quiet, but it carries. "And she does a marvelous job," Claire adds, though she's already looking at her mother. "Mom, did you see the sketches for the new pool house? We're thinking of doing a full outdoor kitchen." I am not offered a seat. There is no chair for me at the table I polished. There is no plate for me among the fine china I hand-washed. I retreat to the kitchen, where I eat a piece of broken quiche over the sink, watching them laugh through the glass of the addition. This is the social death I've felt coming for years. I am no longer a mother, a grandmother, or a friend. I am a utility. I am the electricity that keeps the lights on, the water that keeps the plants green, and the silence that allows them to believe they are the ones doing the heavy lifting. The psychological weight of it is suffocating. I look at the dirty dishes piling up in the sink, the aftermath of a meal I wasn't invited to eat. I feel a sudden, sharp clarity. They don't love me. They love the convenience of me. And convenience is a very easy thing to replace once the bill comes due. After the guests leave for a walk around the grounds, Julian comes into the kitchen. He is flushed with wine and success. "That went well," he says, leaning against the counter. "Richard is impressed with the upkeep. He's thinking of coming in on the urban development project with me. Now, Mom, the papers. Give them to me. I want to scan them and send them off before we head out to dinner." "Dinner?" I ask. "I thought I was roasting the lamb tonight." "Oh, no, we decided to take the Whitneys to that new French place in the city. You don't mind staying here with the kids, do you? Leo has a bit of a cough, and Maya is being, well, Maya. We'd rather not have the drama at a 5-star restaurant." He says it like it's a favor. He's giving me the opportunity to stay home and babysit while they celebrate a deal made on the back of my labor. I see, I say. So the papers? Where are they? I look him in the eye. For the first time, I don't look away. I put them in the safe in the library, Julian. And I've forgotten the combination. My scattered brain, you know. Julian's face darkens. The mask of the successful son slips, revealing the petulant child beneath. Mom, this isn't funny. That's a multi-million-dollar credit line. I told you this was important. I know it's important, Julian. I'll find the code. It's written down somewhere. But right now, I need to clear these tables. I'm quite tired. Fine, he snaps, checking his watch. Find it by the time we get back tonight. Don't make me call a locksmith on Monday. It's embarrassing. He turns and walks out, leaving me with a mountain of crystal glasses and the lingering scent of his expensive cigar. I don't clear the tables. I go to my room and I take the envelope out from under the mattress. I look at the Notice of Intent to Vacate. It is a cold, legal document. It gives the occupants 30 days to leave the premises. I pick up my pen. I think about the empty chair at the brunch table. I think about the good ham and the soggy crust and the scattered brain. I sign the contract for the sale of Oak Haven. The curiosity is no longer about how much I can endure. It's about what will happen when they return from their 5-star dinner to find that the house is no longer their legacy, and I am no longer their lifesaver. I hear the SUV start up in the driveway. They are leaving. I pick up the phone and dial my sister, Evelyn. Evelyn? I say, my voice finally cracking. I'm coming to Maine. But first, I need you to give me the name of that estate lawyer you used. The silence that follows the departure of the SUV is not peaceful. It is a vacuum. The house feels like a lung that has forgotten how to exhale. I stand in the center of the kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of the brunch. Half-eaten crusts of quiche, smeared plates of hollandaise, and 36 crystal glasses with the faint, oily rim of expensive lipstick. In years past, I would have had the dishwasher humming and the silver polished before the car reached the end of the driveway. I would have felt a frantic, nervous energy, the need to erase the evidence of their mess so that the house could return to its perfect state. Tonight, I do nothing. I walk away from the sink. I leave the flies to the smoked salmon. I walk through the addition, the glass walls reflecting my own tired face back at me like a stranger's. I look at the terrace. The linen napkins are strewn across the grass like white flags. "Grandma, I'm hungry!" Leo's voice drifts down from the second floor, sharp and demanding. He doesn't come down the stairs. He expects his voice to carry the weight of an order. I don't answer. I sit in Arthur's old wingback chair in the library. It is the only piece of furniture Julian hasn't tried to update. It smells of old leather and tobacco, a scent that used to mean safety. A few minutes later, I hear Leo's heavy footsteps. He appears in the doorway, his face scrunched in a mix of confusion and irritation. He is holding a video game controller like a scepter. "I said I'm hungry, and the Wi-Fi is acting weird. Did you do something to the router?" I look at him. He is 10 years old, and already he treats me with the same casual dismissiveness as a waiter in a restaurant he doesn't plan on tipping. "There is quiche on the terrace, Leo, and plenty of fruit in the bowl," I say quietly. "I don't want quiche. It's cold. Make me those chicken strips, the ones in the blue box." "The stove is off for the night, Leo. If you're hungry, you can use the microwave. You know how it works." He stares at me, blinking. The idea of preparing his own food is clearly a foreign concept, a breach of the social contract he believes we have. But Mom says you're supposed to watch us. Part of watching us is making dinner. I am watching you, I say, my voice devoid of heat. I am watching you stand there and decide whether you are hungry enough to press a button. He huffs, a miniature version of his father's petulance, and stomps toward the kitchen. I hear him opening and closing the fridge with unnecessary force. He doesn't know it yet, but he is practicing for a life where no one will be there to catch the doors he slams. A moment later, Maya wanders in. She is wearing headphones, the cord trailing behind her like an umbilical cord she refuses to cut. She doesn't even look at me. She goes straight to the desk where Julian's laptop sits. "Did Dad leave his charger?" "Mine broke," she mumbles, her eyes scanning the surface. "I don't know, Maya." She finally looks at me, pushing one headphone off her ear. "Are you okay? You're just sitting in the dark. It's creepy." "I'm just thinking," I say. "Whatever. Can you find my charger? I can't go to the mall tomorrow if my phone is dead. I need to coordinate with Chloe." "I haven't seen it." You probably moved it when you were cleaning. You always hide my stuff." She turns and leaves, her indignation radiating off her in waves. I am the reason her phone is dying. I am the reason her life is difficult. I am the convenient villain in the story of her afternoon. The psychological toll of being a non-person is a slow, grinding erosion. You don't notice it at first. The way they stop saying please, the way they talk over you as if you're a recording, the way your presence is only acknowledged when you fail to meet a need. But eventually, the mountain is gone, and you're just a flat, barren plain. At 8 o'clock, my phone vibrates. It's a call from the lawyer Evelyn recommended, a man named Mr. Elias Thorne. I take the call in the library, the door locked. "Mrs. Sterling," he says. His voice is deep, professional, and carries the weight of a man who deals in the cold reality of contracts. "I've reviewed the deed and the trust documents your sister scanned over. You are indeed the sole titled owner of the Oakhaven estate. The life estate clause your husband drafted is ironclad. Your son's additions are, legally speaking, improvements made to a property he does not own." "And the notice of intent to vacate?" I ask, my hand trembling slightly as I grip the arm of the chair. "It is standard. Since there is no formal lease agreement, they are considered tenants at will. In this state, 30 days is the requirement. However, given the familial nature, things can get messy. If they refuse to leave, we move to formal eviction." "I don't want an eviction," I whisper. "I just want them to understand that the house is sold." "They will understand once the buyer's earnest money hits the escrow account, Mrs. Sterling, which, according to Mr. Henderson, should happen by Tuesday. Once the contract is signed by the buyer, the property is technically under transition. Your son's plans for an equity line of credit will be flagged immediately by the bank. He won't be able to borrow a dime." "Good," I say. "Are you sure about this, Martha? It's a drastic step. There will be no going back once the title transfers." I look out the window at the garden. I see the white lilies, glowing like ghosts in the moonlight. I see the mess on the terrace that I refuse to clean. I see the life I have spent 40 years building, and the people who have spent 20 years dismantling me within it. I've never been sure of anything in my life, Mr. Thorne. After I hang up, I stay in the dark. An hour later, the headlights of the SUV sweep across the library walls. The A-team is back. I hear the car doors thud. I hear Claire's high-pitched laughter. She's had a lot of wine. And Julian's booming voice, boasting about something Richard said. They burst into the house. The energy changes instantly. The vacuum is filled with their noise, their needs, their presence. "Mom? Why are the lights off?" Julian's voice calls out. He sounds annoyed. And what the hell is that smell? Did you leave the food out on the terrace? I don't answer. I wait. I hear him walk into the kitchen. I hear the clatter of plates. Claire, the kitchen is a disaster. Mom, where are you? He storms into the library and flicks on the overhead light. The sudden brightness stings. He is standing there, his face red, his tuxedo shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looks at me, sitting in the chair, and his expression isn't one of concern. It's one of pure, unadulterated anger. What is wrong with you? The house looks like a frat party. My mother-in-law's wrap is still sitting on the foyer floor. And the kitchen? There are flies, Mom. Flies. I was tired, Julian, I say. My voice is a flat, cool stone. Tired? We were gone for 4 hours. You had one job, just keep the place tidy and watch the kids. Instead, I come home to a pigsty. He paces the small room, his agitation growing. And the safe. I want that code. Now. I'm not playing this game anymore. I have a meeting at 8 a.m. and I need those papers scanned. I look at him. My son. The man I carried. The boy I shielded from the world. He looks at me and sees a broken tool. The code is 10-12-84, I say. He stops. He smirks, a triumphant, ugly little expression. See? Was that so hard? October 12th, 84. What is that, your anniversary? Predictable. He turns to the safe in the corner of the library, a heavy, old-fashioned thing behind a false shelf. He spins the dial. He's so eager to get to the money, he doesn't even notice that I haven't moved. He pulls the heavy door open. He reaches inside. He pulls out a single white envelope. It isn't the tax documents. It isn't the equity line application. It is a copy of the Notice of Intent to Vacate, signed by me and dated today. What is this? He asks, his voice dropping an octave. He rips it open. I stand up. My joints ache, but my heart is light. It's your 30-day notice, Julian, I say. I've sold the house. You, Claire, and the children need to find a new place to live by the end of the month. The silence that follows is the most beautiful thing I have ever heard. For a long heartbeat, Julian just stares at the paper. The silence in the library is so thick, I can hear the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the foyer. A clock I have wound every Sunday for 40 years. Then, he laughs. It's a sharp, jagged sound, devoid of any real mirth. He tosses the paper onto the desk as if it were a piece of junk mail. Very funny, Mom. You really had me for a second. Is this because of the wine cellar? Because I moved your sewing table? I told you, we'll find a place for your things. There's no need for the dramatics. He looks at me, waiting for the punchline, waiting for me to break and tell him it was a prank born of a scattered mind. I don't move. I don't blink. It isn't a joke, Julian. The contract is signed. The earnest money is moving. You have 30 days to vacate the addition and the main house. His smile doesn't fade so much as it curdles. He picks up the paper again, his eyes scanning the legal headers, the mention of Elias Thorne, and my signature, bold and black, at the bottom. You can't sell this house, he says, his voice losing its booming authority and becoming thin, reedy. The estate is a family trust. Arthur intended for it to go to me. I've put hundreds of thousands into that addition. You can't just sell someone else's investment. It was never a trust, Julian. Your father left the property to me in its entirety. You drafted trust papers 5 years ago, but I never signed them. I told you I'd get around to it, and you were so busy with your own life that you never checked the filing cabinet. You assumed my silence was consent. It was actually just observation. The realization hits him like a physical blow. I watch the blood drain from his face. This is the man who manages millions of dollars for strangers. Yet he failed to manage the legal reality of the roof over his head because he couldn't imagine a world where I was anything other than a permanent, passive fixture. Julian, what's going on? Claire stands in the doorway. She has a glass of water in one hand and her expensive leather handbag in the other. She looks between us, her eyes narrowing as she senses the shift in the room's atmosphere. Julian doesn't look at her. He's staring at me as if I've suddenly sprouted wings. She sold the house, Claire, Julian says, his voice barely a whisper. What do you mean, sold the house? Claire's laugh is even more shrill than Julian's. She can't sell the house. We live here. My parents are literally coming back tomorrow to look at the pool plans. She signed a contract, Julian snaps, finally looking at his wife. She's given us 30 days. Claire's face undergoes a terrifying transformation. The polite, polished mask of the suburban socialite shatters, revealing a raw, jagged entitlement. She turns to me, her eyes burning. You're senile, she spits. That's what this is. Julian, she's clearly lost her mind. We've been saying she's been scattered for months. No judge is going to uphold a contract signed by a woman who doesn't even know what day it is. I feel a strange, cold calm. For years, I've let them use that word, scattered, to diminish me. They used it to explain away my exhaustion, to ignore my opinions, and to justify their own neglect. I know exactly what day it is, Claire, I say. It's Sunday, the 14th. Yesterday, I bought 4 pounds of smoked salmon for your brunch, which you didn't thank me for. 3 hours ago, your son told me I was supposed to make him chicken strips because that's my job. And 10 minutes ago, your husband told me that my anniversary was predictable. I take a step toward them. They both flinch, just a fraction. I am not senile. I am finished. I have spent 20 years being the grease in the gears of your lives, and I've watched you treat me with less respect than you give your dry cleaner. You don't love this house. You love the status it gives you. You love the free labor I provide. Well, the labor is over. And the status is moving to a buyer who actually appreciates original mahogany. We'll fight this, Julian says, his voice regaining some of its steel. He steps toward me, trying to use his height to intimidate me. I'll tie this up in court for years. You won't see a dime of that sale money by the time I'm done with the legal fees. You think you're being clever, but you're just destroying your own family. I'm not destroying anything, Julian. I'm simply reclaiming what's left of my life. And as for the court, Mr. Thorne is quite prepared. He has the recordings of our conversations regarding the trust you tried to pressure me into signing. He also has the receipts for every repair I've paid for out of my own savings, while you spent your bonuses on Italian suits. I walk past them, heading for the door. I stop at the threshold and look back. The kitchen is still a mess, Julian. There are flies on the salmon. Since you're so concerned about the state of the house, I suggest you start cleaning. I'm going to bed. And I've locked the door to the West Wing addition from this side. You'll have to use the outside entrance from now on. After all, you're just tenants now. I walk out of the library and up the stairs. My heart is pounding, a wild, frantic bird in my chest, but my hands are perfectly still. I reach my room and lock the door. I sit on the edge of the bed and listen. The house, which is usually so quiet, erupts. I hear Julian and Claire shouting in the library. I hear the sound of a glass shattering, probably the water Claire was holding. I hear the heavy thud of Julian's fist hitting the oak desk. Then, I hear the children. "Dad, why is the door to the kitchen locked?" Leo's voice is muffled, coming from the other side of the heavy oak door that separates the main house from the addition. "Go to bed, Leo," Julian bellows. I lay back on my pillows. The sheets are crisp, and for the first time in a decade, I don't feel the need to get up and check if the stove is off or the windows are latched. The psychological insight hits me then. They aren't afraid of losing me. They are afraid of losing the version of me that served them. They are grieving a ghost that hasn't even left the building yet. As I drift off to sleep, a single thought remains. Julian mentioned the family legacy. He doesn't realize that a legacy isn't built of bricks and mortar. It's built of the way you treat the people who hold the walls up. He let the walls crumble years ago. I'm just the one finally letting the roof fall in. The morning after the reveal, the house feels like a battlefield where the fog has yet to lift. I wake up at my usual time, 5:30, but for the first time in 20 years, I do not descend the stairs to start the coffee. I stay in bed, watching the gray light of dawn filter through the lace curtains. I listen to the silence of the main house, a silence that feels heavy and intentional. Then, the noise starts. From the West Wing addition, I hear the muffled sounds of frantic movement. The glass and steel of Julian's improvement have always been poorly insulated compared to the thick lath and plaster of the original structure. I hear the sharp staccato clicks of Claire's heels on the hardwood, the bang of a cupboard door, and then the inevitable sound of a handle being rattled. The door connecting the addition to my kitchen is locked from my side. It's a heavy oak door, original to the house, with a skeleton key that I haven't turned in years. "Mom? Mom, open this door!" Julian's voice is thick with sleep and irritation. He bangs his fist against the wood. I don't answer. I am sitting in my bed, draped in a knitted shawl, reading a book of poetry Arthur gave me for our 10th anniversary. "Martha, this is ridiculous! All the breakfast food is in that kitchen. The kids need to get ready for school." I let him shout. I let him rattle the knob until his hands must be sore. When I finally decide to move, it's not because of his demands, but because I want a cup of tea. I dress slowly. I choose a navy blue cardigan and my favorite pearls. I want to look like the woman who owns a $4 million asset, not the woman who scrubs its toilets. When I enter the kitchen, the smell of the previous night's rot hits me. I had forgotten about the plates on the terrace. I walk to the window and see a murder of crows picking at the remains of the smoked salmon and the quiche. It is a grim, black-winged carnival. I ignore the mess. I put the kettle on. A few minutes later, the back door, the mudroom entrance, flings open. Julian and Claire burst in, followed by a confused and scowling Leo. They had to walk all the way around the exterior of the house in the damp morning air to get into the main kitchen. Their shoes are wet and their faces are red. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Julian demands, pointing a finger at me. "You locked us out of the kitchen? My children are hungry, Martha. You're depriving your own grandchildren of food?" "The food is right there, Julian," I say, nodding toward the pantry. "I simply locked the door to my private residence. This kitchen is part of the main house. The addition has its own kitchenette, doesn't it? The one with the marble wet bar and the wine fridge?" "That's for entertaining, not for making a family breakfast," Claire screams. She looks haggard. Her hair is unwashed, and she's wearing a tracksuit that costs more than my monthly Social Security check. "You can't just change the rules of the house overnight." "I haven't changed the rules, Claire. I've simply started enforcing the boundaries. As tenants, you have access to your designated living area. If you'd like to use my kitchen, you can ask politely, and perhaps we can arrange a schedule, but I will no longer be providing the catering." Leo looks between us, his eyes wide. "Grandma, where's my oatmeal? I have a test today." I look at my grandson. I see the flicker of genuine confusion in his eyes. He has been raised to believe that his needs are gravity, a natural force that the world must satisfy. "The oats are in the second cupboard, Leo. The milk is in the fridge. You're a smart boy. I'm sure you can manage." "He shouldn't have to manage," Claire snaps. She lunges for the fridge, grabbing a carton of milk so forcefully it splashes onto the floor. "You're being cruel. This is psychological elder abuse in reverse. You're holding us hostage in our own home." "It isn't your home, Claire. That's the point you seem to be struggling with." I take my tea and sit at the small breakfast nook. I don't offer to help. I watch as they descend into chaos. Julian is on his phone, likely texting his lawyer, while trying to find a clean bowl. Claire is frantically throwing bread into the toaster, her hands shaking. Leo stands in the middle of the room, realizing for the first time that the Grandma app has been deleted. The psychological insight is chilling. They are utterly helpless. In 20 years of taking care of me, they have forgotten how to take care of themselves. I have enabled their incompetence, and now that I've withdrawn the support, their entire structure is wobbling. Around 10 o'clock, after the children have been shuffled off to school and Julian has left for his office in a cloud of exhaust and profanity, a black sedan pulls into the driveway. The Whitneys. I had forgotten they were coming back to see the pool plans. Claire hasn't had time to clean the terrace. She hasn't even finished the dishes in the sink. I watch from the library window as Diane and Richard Whitney step out of the car. They look impeccable, as always. They are met on the porch by Claire, who looks like she's on the verge of a nervous breakdown. "Mother, Daddy, it's a bad time," I hear Claire say through the glass. "Nonsense, darling," Diane's voice carries. "We have the architect on the phone for a noon conference. We need to measure the slope near the rose bushes. Where's Martha? I need her to move those garden chairs." I open the front door before Claire can stop me. "Good morning, Diane. Richard," I say, my voice calm and clear. Diane looks at me, her brow furrowing. "Martha, you're dressed formally. Is there an event?" "No event, just a change in management. I'm afraid there won't be any pool house, Richard. The property is under contract for sale. The new owners intend to restore the original garden, so the glass addition will likely be demolished." The silence that follows is so profound I can hear a bee buzzing in the nearby hydrangea. Richard Whitney's face turns a shade of purple that matches his silk tie. "Sale? What is she talking about, Claire?" Claire looks at the floor, her shoulders slumped. She sold it, Dad. She's giving us 30 days. Richard turns his gaze to me. It is a look of pure aristocratic condescension. "Now, see here, Martha. Julian has invested significant capital into this estate. We were under the impression this was a family legacy. You can't just liquidate a legacy because of a whim." "It wasn't a whim, Richard. It was a calculation. A legacy is something you cherish, not something you use to exploit your mother. If you're so concerned about Julian's investment, perhaps you can help him find a lovely rental in the city. I hear the market is quite aggressive right now." I see the moment the power shifts. Richard, a man who has spent his life giving orders, realizes he has no standing here. He is a guest of a tenant on a property owned by a woman he has treated as a maid for a decade. "We're leaving," Diane says, her voice trembling with indignation. "Claire, call us when you've sorted this mess. I won't stay in a house where the hostess has clearly lost her faculties." They turn and walk back to their sedan. Claire stands on the porch, watching them go, her face a mask of humiliation. She doesn't look at me. She can't. The curiosity hook remains. Julian hasn't spoken to the bank yet. He hasn't realized that the equity line he was counting on to save his failing investments is gone. And when that realization hits, the negotiations will turn into something much darker than a locked kitchen door. I go back inside and lock the front door. I have 29 days left. By Tuesday afternoon, the atmospheric pressure inside Oak Haven has dropped to a level that makes it hard to breathe. The house feels smaller, the ceilings lower. I spend the morning in the attic, the one place they never go because the stairs are steep and the air is thick with the dust of the things they've forgotten. I am sorting through Arthur's old journals. I find a receipt from 1992 tucked into a page about the day we planted the silver maple in the backyard. It's a receipt for Julian's first private school tuition. We couldn't afford it then. Arthur took a second job at the night pharmacy, and I stopped buying new clothes for 3 years. Julian doesn't remember the sacrifice. He only remembers the privilege. I hear the front door slam, a violent structural thud that vibrates through the attic floorboards. Julian is home early. Usually, he doesn't return until 7, but the rhythm of his footsteps is different today. It's erratic, panic-stricken. Martha, where are you? He doesn't call me Mom. He uses my name like a summons. I don't answer. I continue to fold a moth-eaten wool blanket. I hear him storming through the house. He checks the kitchen, the parlor, the library. Finally, I hear him at the foot of the attic stairs. He doesn't come up. He hates the heat and the cramped space. I know you're up there, he yells. Come down here now. We need to talk. My banker just called me. He said the title search for the equity line hit a red flag. He said the property is flagged as pending sale. What did you do, Martha? What did you tell them? I stand at the top of the stairs, looking down into the dim well of the hallway. Julian is standing there, his face a mottled, angry red. He is holding his phone as if it's a weapon. I didn't tell them anything, Julian. The title office is simply doing its job. You tried to borrow money against an asset that is already under contract to another party. That's called fraud in some circles. I descend the stairs slowly, one hand on the railing. He looks like he wants to reach out and shake me, but something in my expression stops him. For the first time in his life, he is looking at a woman he cannot control, with a sigh or a frown. Cancel it, he says, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous hiss. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I need that credit line. I've already committed that capital to the development project. If I don't move that money by Friday, I'm in breach of contract. Do you understand? You're ruining me. You ruined yourself, Julian, when you spent money you didn't have on a house you didn't own. You assumed I would always be the safety net. You assumed my life had no value beyond supporting yours. We walk into the library. He paces the room, his hands running through his thinning hair. You don't understand the world I work in. Everything is built on leverage. This house was my leverage. No, I say, sitting in the wingback chair. This house was my home. You turned it into a bank vault. The psychological shift in him is fascinating to watch. He realizes that anger isn't working. He stops pacing. He sits on the edge of the desk, my desk, and softens his features. He tries to summon the boy he used to be, the one who knew exactly how to make me melt with a lopsided smile. Mom, he says, the word dripping with artificial warmth. Look, I'm sorry I've been stressed. I know I haven't been the most attentive son lately. Claire and we've been under a lot of pressure. But we love you. We wanted you here because we wanted the kids to grow up with their grandmother. If it's about the sewing room, I'll move everything back. I'll hire a contractor to finish it exactly how you want. Just please, call this Thorm guy. Tell him you changed your mind. We can fix this as a family. It is a masterclass in weaponized affection. He is offering me crumbs of the respect I should have had for years, but only because the hunger of his own ambition is gnawing at him. The sewing room was never the point, Julian. The point is that you only see my value when you're about to lose it. That's not true, he says, but his eyes flicker toward the safe. Where is the good watch, Julian? The Patek Philippe your father left you? I ask suddenly. He blinks, caught off guard. It's in my dresser. Why? No, it isn't. You pawned it 6 months ago to cover the deposit on the Edition's glass panels. I found the ticket in the trash when I was emptying your office bin. The silence that follows is absolute. Julian's mouth hangs open slightly. He didn't know I knew. He didn't think the servant looked at the trash. He thought I just made it disappear. You've been drowning for a long time, haven't you? I say, my voice almost gentle. And you thought you could keep treading water by standing on my shoulders. But I'm tired of holding you up, Julian. I'm tired of being the invisible foundation for your vanity. You're a cold-blooded woman, he whispers. The mask of the loving sun is gone, replaced by a raw, naked resentment. To do this to your own flesh and blood, where are you even going to go? You'll be alone. Nobody will care about you in some sterile apartment. I've been alone in this house for 5 years, Julian. At least in an apartment, I won't have to wash the dishes of the people ignoring me. He stands up, his movements stiff. Fine. You want to play it this way? We'll see how long your contract lasts. I'm calling a specialist, someone who deals with diminished capacity. You're clearly not yourself. He stalks out of the room. A moment later, I hear him on the phone in the hallway, his voice hushed and urgent. The dependency is now becoming a liability. He needs me to be crazy to save his finances, but he needs me to be sane to keep the house running until he can figure out a way to steal it. It's a psychological tightrope, and he's already losing his balance. I go to the kitchen. For the first time in 20 years, I don't check what's in the pantry for dinner. I make myself a single piece of toast with tea. As I sit there, the curiosity hook begins to itch. Julian mentioned he's in breach of contract if he doesn't have the money by Friday. He didn't just want the equity line for a new project, he wanted it to cover a hole he's already dug. The question is, how deep is that hole? And what will he do when he realizes the 30-day notice isn't just a threat, but a countdown to his total financial collapse? I hear Claire's SUV pull into the driveway. She's early, too. I hear the muffled sound of their voices meeting in the foyer, the sharp, frantic tones of two people who just realized the free ride is heading toward a cliff. I take a bite of my toast. It's a bit burnt, but it's the best thing I've tasted in years. The smell of the rotting salmon on the terrace finally becomes unavoidable. It wafts through the screen door, a sickly, sweet reminder of the brunch that ended my life as I knew it. Julian and Claire are in the kitchen now, standing over the sink. They aren't cleaning. They are staring at the pile of dishes as if it were a complex mathematical equation they lack the variables to solve. Is the cleaning lady coming tomorrow? Claire asks. Her voice is brittle. She's holding a wine glass that is already half full, though it's barely 5 o'clock. We don't have a cleaning lady, Claire, Julian says, his voice low and jagged. We have Martha, and apparently Martha is on strike. I am sitting in the breakfast nook, peeling an apple. The sound of the knife against the skin is the only sharp thing in the room besides their tempers. I don't look up. I don't offer to help. I am practicing a new kind of presence. I am a statue in my own home. Martha, seriously, Claire says, turning to face me. She tries for a tone of reasonable compromise, but her eyes are frantic. The house is starting to smell. The kids are complaining. We have a life to lead. If you're upset about the sewing room, we can talk about it, but this passive-aggressive filth is beneath you. The filth isn't mine, Claire, I say, a sliver of apple skin falling onto the plate. I didn't eat the salmon. I didn't leave the glasses out. I've decided that I am no longer the curator of other people's messes. If the house smells, I suggest you find a sponge. I don't have time for this, Julian explodes, slamming his hand on the marble island. I have a legal team to coordinate. I have investors to stall. I am trying to save our future, and you're worried about who does the dishes? I'm not worried about the dishes at all, Julian. That's the point. I've stopped worrying entirely. The psychological insight hits me with the force of a physical weight. Their success was never theirs. It was a delicate film of oil sitting on top of the vast, deep ocean of my labor. I provided the order that allowed Julian to focus on his vision. I provided the childcare that allowed Claire to maintain her social standing. Without the foundation, the skyscraper is beginning to tilt. Leo wanders into the kitchen. He looks disheveled. His school uniform is wrinkled, and there's a smudge of dirt on his cheek. "Grandma, my soccer cleats are still wet from yesterday," he says. He's not demanding yet, just confused. The world has always worked a certain way, and now it isn't. "You usually put them on the heater." "I didn't get to them, Leo," I say softly. "But I have practice in 20 minutes. Mom, tell her." Claire looks at the wet cleats Leo is holding, then looks at me. She looks like she wants to scream, but she knows that if she does, she loses the last shred of the perfect mother image she projects. "Go get your old ones, Leo," she says through gritted teeth. "They don't fit. They hurt my toes." "Then you'll have to skip practice," Julian yells, his frustration finally finding a target he feels safe hitting. Leo bursts into tears and runs out of the room. The sound of his sobbing echoes up the stairs, followed by the familiar thud of his bedroom door. It's a sound I've spent 20 years trying to prevent. My instinct is to go to him, to dry the cleats, to fix the world. But I stay in my seat. I eat my apple. The dependency is a trap. If I fix the cleats, I validate their belief that I am an extension of their will. "See what you're doing?" Claire whispers, her voice shaking. "You're hurting the children now. Is this what you want? To be remembered as the grandmother who broke their hearts over a house?" "I'm being remembered as a person, Claire, not a service. It's a distinction you should learn before you find yourself in my position." Julian's phone rings. He looks at the screen and his face goes gray. He doesn't answer it. He walks out of the kitchen and into his office in the West Wing, locking the door behind him. Claire watches him go, then turns back to the dishes. She picks up a plate, looks at the dried egg yolk on it, and then, with a strangled cry, she drops it into the sink. It doesn't break, but it clatters with a sound like a gunshot. She follows Julian toward the addition, leaving the kitchen empty. I am alone again. I stand up and walk to the hallway. I pick up the mail that Julian dropped on the console table in his rush. Amidst the catalogs and the utility bills, there is a thick, cream-colored envelope addressed to Julian Sterling. It's from a private investigation firm. I shouldn't open it. But then again, I am the owner of this house, and Julian is a tenant who is currently threatening to sue me for diminished capacity. I take the envelope to the library. Inside is a report. Julian hasn't just been leveraging the house, he's been being watched. The report is commissioned by his own firm's board of directors. It lists irregularities in the Oak Haven Development Fund. He wasn't just using the equity line to fund a project. He was using it to replace money he had already borrowed from his clients' accounts. My son isn't just a failing businessman. He's a desperate man on the edge of a criminal indictment. The hole isn't deep. It's bottomless. And he needs the sale of this house to stop, not because he loves the legacy, but because the moment the house is sold, the title search will reveal the liens he's tried to hide. He needs the house to stay in my name, under his control, so he can keep the shell game going. I hear a car pull into the driveway. It's not the Whitneys. It's a plain silver sedan. Two men in dark suits get out. They don't look like real estate agents. They look like the end of a long, expensive lie. They walk up the steps and ring the bell. I sit very still in the library. I don't answer the door. I want to see if Julian will. I want to see if he can still pretend to be the king of the hill when the mountain is being repossessed. The curiosity hook. If Julian is being investigated for embezzlement, my sale of the house might be the only thing that saves me from being dragged down with him. But it's also the very thing that will push him over the edge. I hear Julian's office door open. I hear his heavy, panicked footsteps in the foyer. "Mom, don't answer that," he hisses through the library door. "I'm not moving, Julian," I say. He doesn't open the front door. He watches the men through the sidelight window. After a few minutes, they leave a card tucked into the frame and drive away. Julian enters the library. He is sweating. He looks at me, and for the first time, I don't see my son. I see a predator who has run out of forest. "We need to leave," he says. "Not in 30 days. We need to leave the state tonight. We'll pack the SUV, you come with us. We'll go to the cabin in Vermont. We can hide the paperwork there." "I'm not going anywhere, Julian," I say. "I have a closing to attend." He reaches out and grabs my arm. His grip is too tight. "You don't understand. If that sale goes through, they'll see everything. You're going to put your own son in prison." The escalation is no longer emotional, it's visceral. Julian's grip on my arm is a hot, desperate iron. He is no longer the polished financier. He is a drowning man trying to pull me under the waves with him. His eyes are wide, the pupils dilated with a terror he can no longer mask with arrogance. "You're hurting me, Julian," I say. My voice is as calm as a winter morning. "I'm saving us," he bellows, his voice cracking. "If we leave now, I can fix the books from the cabin. I just need time. If the sale goes through, the audit becomes a forensic investigation. Everything I've built, it all vanishes." I look down at his hand, then back up at his face. "You didn't build any of this, Julian. You decorated it with stolen money. You built a glass house and expected me to keep the stones away." I twist my arm, not with strength, but with a sudden, sharp precision, and step back. He stumbles, his balance betrayed by his own frantic energy. "The men in the silver sedan," I say, smoothing my sleeve, "they weren't just investigators, were they? They were from the district attorney's office. I know because I'm the one who gave them the login credentials for your private server." The silence that follows is so absolute, it feels like the house itself has stopped breathing. Julian freezes. His mouth opens, but no sound comes out. In the doorway, Claire stands paralyzed, her wineglass finally slipping from her fingers and shattering on the hardwood. You? Julian whispers. You betrayed your own son? No, Julian. I stopped a thief from stealing my husband's legacy, I reply. I've watched you for 3 years. I saw the way you moved money from the estate's maintenance fund into your shell accounts. I saw the way you forged my signature on the first loan application for the addition. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? I'm the one who balances the books of this house. I know where every cent goes, from the organic berries to the mortgage interest. You let me do it, he gasps, realization dawning on him. You let me build the addition. You let me think I was safe. I let you provide the evidence, I correct him. I needed you to be so comfortable, so convinced of my insignificance, that you became careless. You thought I was a servant. And servants are invisible. We see everything because no one bothers to hide anything from us. The psychological weight of the revelation collapses the room. Julian sinks into Arthur's wingback chair, the very chair he once coveted as a throne. He looks small. He looks broken. Why? He moans. I'm your son. And Arthur was my husband. This house was his heart. You were going to let the bank seize it to pay for your fraud. I couldn't let that happen. So, I found a buyer who would protect it. Who? Claire asks, her voice a hollow shell. Who is buying it for $4 million in cash? I look out the window at the silver maple in the yard. The Sterling Historic Preservation Trust. I use the money from Arthur's life insurance, the money you told me to invest with you, to start it. I am the buyer, Julian. Well, the trust is. I sold the house to myself, using the very money you tried to talk me out of. I walk to the desk and pick up a small brass key. The sale is finalized. The house is now a protected landmark. And as for the addition, I pause, offering him a small, sad smile. The demolition crew arrives on Monday. It turns out the glass and steel aren't historically accurate. Your legacy will be gone by Friday. Julian looks at me, and for the first time, I see a flicker of respect in his eyes. A dark, terrified respect for the woman he never bothered to know. What do we do? He asks. You do what I've done for 20 years, I say, walking toward the door. You find a way to live with the consequences of your choices. There's a lawyer waiting for you in the city. He's very good. I paid his retainer out of the sale proceeds. Consider it my final act of service. I walk out of the library and up the stairs. I don't look back at the broken glass or the broken man. I go to my room and pack a single suitcase. I take my sewing kit, my journals, and the photograph of Arthur. As I walk out the front door, the evening air is cool and sweet. The house, Oak Haven, looks grand in the twilight, noble, silent, and finally safe. I get into my 10-year-old sedan, the one Julian called an eyesore. The engine turns over on the first try. I drive down the long, winding driveway. I look in the rearview mirror and see the lights of the addition flickering. Inside, I know they are scrambling, packing, weeping. I reach the end of the drive and turn toward the highway, heading north toward Maine, toward Evelyn, toward a life where I don't have to be the grease in the gears. The final realization settles over me like a warm blanket. They thought I was the one who was trapped. They never realized that the person who holds the keys is the only one who can truly leave. I look at the empty passenger seat. For the first time in 20 years, the silence isn't heavy. It's hollow. And hollow things are light enough to fly.